Welcome to Your Story, everybody. As you all know, the world continues to struggle with the COVID-19 pandemic. Businesses are getting used to this new landscape. They're trying to find new ways to optimize costs, improve productivity, and explore unique opportunities through digital transformation. The pandemic has shown how a digital transformation business can make its operations more resilient and productive. Particularly for SMEs, this becomes very important. It's important to see how they're adopting digital tools to survive and thrive in the wake of the new business landscape. Today, there are various agencies and stakeholders who are enabling this by extending support to MSMEs. One of the most notable schemes is the Global Bharat program, which aims to act as a catalyst for MSMEs to introduce greater efficiencies, augment their business value with a three-step approach. The theme of today's fireside chat is the future is now, enabling digital transformation for MSME growth. And we will find out more about the processes and approaches that can help MSMEs to become future ready. For this, I'd like to introduce Alok Mishra, Operating Partner and Chief Operating Officer for India at General Atlantic. How are you, Alok?
I'm doing very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm very good. A little bit about Alok, okay, ladies and gentlemen. A fellow member of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India, Alok is an industry leader with more than 30 years of experience in the world of finance. I'm sure MSMEs who always struggle with finance will love the knowledge that he's bringing into this program and Fireside Chat. He provides strategic support and financial expertise to firms, investment teams, and portfolio companies with a focus on India and the APAC region. Prior to joining General Atlantic, Alok has worked with WNS Group, Emphasis BFL Group, ITC, and PwC. Again, Alok, thank you for being here. I think MSMEs would love the knowledge that you brought in and continue to bring in. Welcome to the show, sir. How are you again?
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. My pleasure to be here. I'm doing good. I'm doing good.
It's been a tough year for all of us. Everyone has struggled at to realign business processes. Digital transformation became the name of the hour or the need of the hour. So how is it for you and your family? All okay?
Oh, yes, yes. Actually, for the first 6 months, I'm Bombay based for my work. So for the first 6 months, I was literally locked up in my apartment. I didn't even step out of the front door. And when I did, I just left for the airport, took a flight and came to Bangalore. Bangalore is kind of home for me. So I came home to Bangalore and I've been here for the last 6 months or so, taking full advantage of work from, well, WFH in my case is work from hometown rather than just work from home. So yeah, it's not been too bad. Bangalore has actually been reasonably good. Weather was good. It's getting a little warm now, but weather was great all these months.
And I'm glad, and I'm sure that many of us are sporting beautiful beards, and I think a lot of our dreams have come true with the beard too. But let me start. This is a very important topic. MSMEs, I've been covering them for 20 years, and they ask one question, right? The pandemic has changed our business landscape, and it's a very tough time for us. And they also asked me, what were some of the challenges and opportunities that I should overcome with this new landscape? And the new landscape for me is digital transformation.
See, I think the first thing, digital transformation is probably a second step. The first step is to be nimble and flexible, because
Absolutely.
I think the advantage that MSMEs have is that their decision-making process is far quicker than some of the larger organizations, which may tend to be a little more bureaucratic. And so use that advantage that you have to the fullest. Be nimble and flexible. And part of that strategy of being nimble and flexible is how can you use digital transformation to then aid your decision making, because that will help you make the decisions faster. So the fundamental principle is be nimble and flexible, make your decisions faster. As a subset of that, how can you use digital transformation to help you make the best decision at lightning speed? So I would put it that way.
Okay, well said. And one of the key aspects of decision making involves finances too. Most of the MSMEs, right, have to approach finance very carefully. I mean, it's very hard. Their working capital management, funding, debt equity, right, the way they have to manage the two, right? So, how would you, advise them in the post-COVID world? How should they manage their finances?
It depends a little bit about which sector they're in and also how well they are funded, because if you see the way startups or even MSMEs have been funded, depending on the sector they're in, Some of them may be very well funded. So let me try and look at 2 or 3 different parts of the spectrum to say those who are well funded, they could probably be a little more opportunistic and aggressive, and say, look at those who are not as well funded, but who may have a good business model. And is there a way of some potential consolidation or M&A there? Those who are well funded can afford to be a little more aggressive. Those who are not as well funded, for them, it's really about being conserving cash, trying to improve productivity, and keeping a very close watch on collections, because everybody is conserving cash, right? So that's the problem. And usually the MSMEs come a little, shall we say, earlier in the production cycle.
Yes.
So the people they sell to tend to be bigger companies, and therefore, if those guys are conserving cash, there's very little you can do to push them for greater collections. So you have to figure out ways of A, conserving cash for yourself, or B, working out alternative sources of funding. That's a loan or a capital raise.
Correct, and you're right. Depending on the sector that they're in, they have to manage their finances carefully. Let's look at family businesses, because the majority of MSMEs in India are family run, right? Especially manufacturing, right?
Yeah.
And they're usually linked to a larger industry, say textiles or automobile, right? Are they managing their finances well? You're from the ICFAI also. You'd probably meet so many family offices and businesses. Has it been tough for them too in managing cash over last year?
It has been. And I think what helped them were some of the moves that the government also made in terms of allowing or making banks provide a moratorium on loan recovery, on interest payments. Some of the moves the government itself did in helping the cash flow. Because if you see the government in its initial sort of SOPs, if you want to call it that it handed out, it was less about giving freebies and more about helping all people in the economy conserve cash and postpone payments, whether it was to lenders or to the government. So you could postpone you could delay your PF deposits, you could delay your tax payments, though you had to pay a little bit of interest for that. So that acted as a kind of indirect loan from the government at a less than normal interest rate. They also provided under the Atmanirbhar scheme, they also provided the guarantee for banks to then lend on the base of a previous track record that people had of borrowings. On that basis, the banks would lend more, and the government would back that, and government would stand security for that. So I've seen quite a few MSMEs benefit from that, and people were able to then conserve the cash. And as the economic recovery has slowly but surely started coming through, many of them are becoming more and more current on payments. The other thing that I found a lot of people did was renegotiate rentals. At least if not on a permanent basis, at least on a temporary basis. So they were able to get some rental relief for 3 to 6 months. Most people seem to have got it till March. So come April, I think everybody will be back on their regular rental payments. But I think many people have reached close to pre-COVID levels of revenues as well. So I think that timing is also appropriate.
And I think that's a fair point to make. We're looking for economic recovery, and it's heartening to see a lot of these MSME, entrepreneurs, legacy founders, really making a comeback. The key word, sir, is optimization. And what are some of the ways in which MSMEs can optimize their costs while boosting productivity levels at this point of time? It's a broad topic, I understand. I mean, if you can also throw color by using examples on what you mean by boosting productivity. One of the ways to boost productivity is obviously conserve finance and use it better, experiment less. But what would you advise as the most important point to optimize for costs?
So I think most MSMEs, especially those who are in the manufacturing sector, do tend to be a little labor intensive.
Yes.
So I think anything that can help improve labor productivity always helps. And whether manufacturing does not always lend itself to work from home, unfortunately. Those in the service sector did see some improvement in productivity because people were working from home and they found that a little more productive because they didn't have to commute, or people changed their way of working to allow remote working rather than everybody having to come to the office. But on the manufacturing sector, I think anything that people have done to improve labor productivity. Some people do have job working kind of setup where they don't have a full labor force themselves, but they kind of outsource it on a piece working model. That has also helped them improve productivity. But anything that a lot of people have also tried to invest in skill development, because the government has also given a fair bit of incentive for that, provided some benefits for skill development. So anything that people have done for skill development that in turn helped improve productivity, that has come out quite useful. Some of it has been short-term negotiation. So whether it was delaying loan repayments, or a big factor, like I mentioned earlier, was rental renegotiations.
Yes.
Many people also took certain amount of moratorium on wage increases. Senior people took wage cuts. I know in some of our companies, which are mid-sized, the frontline workers' wages weren't affected, but middle management took a small pay cut. Senior management and founders and the proprietors took a much larger pay cut, which was again then flipped to a variable pay model to say that when we recover, then we will get a greater share of the profits to make up for the wages or the salaries that we have foregone now. So I think that was one way to conserve cash, and we've seen that work practically in one or two of our portfolio companies, which are mid-sized and which were at probably the wrong end of the spectrum. One of them is in fashion retail. One of them is a restaurant company. So restaurants were shut even before the lockdown. Restaurants started shutting because there were no footfalls, right? It made no sense opening the restaurant and running the lights and air conditioning and everything if nobody was going to come. So they actually started closing down, or the restaurants, even before the lockdown. So by the end of February, early March last year, it was already starting to happen. But today, I'm happy to say every one of their restaurants is reopened, and with all the safety protocols in place, distancing, table service rather than buffet services, those kind of things. So I think what people have done is help to improve the skills in the interim. That has helped then in turn to improve productivity when things have reopened.
Okay. Investments are very important to grow, and I'm glad you said that the economy is going to come back sooner. So investing safely is very important at this point of time. How does one plan for significant growth and experiment at the same time? So next 12 months, how should they approach their investments?
So again, it goes back to what we were discussing earlier about the sector you're in, right? So if you are in a sector which has probably benefited from COVID, let's say the ed tech sector has hugely benefited, the e-commerce part of businesses has benefited. I think one of the things that most people have done is try to go direct to consumer. And when I say direct to consumer, is the e-commerce and delivery part of the business has increased significantly. So if a restaurant couldn't have dine-in, it could have home delivery. There are restaurant chains that have started a separate delivery business under a separate brand, which was delivery only, or used some of their premises as cloud kitchens and run delivery businesses. One of our restaurant chains, which is typically a buffet restaurant, it's called Absolute Barbecue. It's typically a buffet restaurant. We started the whole express delivery and said, how can we deliver a buffet in a box? How can we deliver a barbecue experience in a box, home delivered to the customer? E-commerce, everybody saw huge improvement. I remember in the early days of the lockdown, I was on a webinar. In those days, there was literally 6 webinars a day, and everybody was still trying to find out how are things going to pan out. And like everybody else, I was attending a bunch of these webinars, and then soon I started being a little more discerning. But at least in the early days, I remember one of them where somebody said that whatever they were, and that's one of the larger e-commerce players in this country, that India head was saying that whatever they were expecting in terms of the advancement of their business and the whole adoption of online shopping and digital tools had been advanced some 10 years because of this, right? So people's acceptance. Another one of our portfolio companies is Byju's, which is probably synonymous with online education. The adoption rates, they no longer had to do the convincing part or the concept selling, right? Everybody understood and knew, and it was really about saying, what am I getting value for money, rather than teaching them the concept of online education, right? Similarly, with another company of ours, Unacademy, which has also done extremely well in this, because the movement away from physical offline tuition classes, whether it was one-on-one or one-to-many, to a more online system in an organized manner with the syllabus, with proper classes, with I think one of the things that digital did, or in that period, was it made geography history, in the sense that location was no longer a constraint. You could be, I'm a little shy to admit this, but during that time, I decided I should also learn something new. And one of the things I felt I could learn was a new language, and I tried to learn Tamil. And I took on, I started learning from a tutor in Chennai when I was sitting in Bombay. And earlier I had tried to find a local tutor, and I wasn't sure where to find one. But here I found one easily. We used to do Zoom 3 times a week, and I was trying to, learn Tamil. But, unfortunately, I didn't sustain that, but much to my tutor's dismay. But what that has helped is actually it's removed the geographic constraint, at least on the online education. So if you had a good teacher in Lucknow and the student in Bombay, earlier that class wouldn't happen. Today it can, right? Because the people are open to the possibility. Possibility existed always. People are just a lot more accepting of it now. So that's what we mean by the whole digital agenda being advanced at least 10 years by the
well said. I mean, that's a trend, guys watching this, MSME founders, this is a trend that's going to play out, and you got to be ready for it. And I'm glad you said you're learning Tamil, and that too digitally, and geography is something that's taken out. It's India's going through its own localization. And earlier you alluded saying that somebody called you Dumbledore. But because you're learning Tamil, you might as well call yourself a Thiruvalluvar now, right? It's very interesting, right?
Elections are coming, I dare not.
Absolutely. And I myself am learning guitar digitally now. I mean, I used to go, drive down 20 kilometers. Now my master is happy teaching online. And I'm glad the pandemic changed my master's love for digital. And he was the one who suggested that we go digital. I'm sure MSME is watching this, will understand this trend. So let me explore this. I know consumption is growing in India. EdTech, gaming, FinTech, everything is centered around consumption in India. But MSMEs, like we discussed, the majority of them would be B2B. So funding, while it continues on the consumption side, how will this trend play out in the future for the B2B industries and the likes? Because I like the fact that you laid the foundation, saying this geography-less thing will be there forever now, and the seamless integration digital stacks are going to become a reality. So, what are your thoughts on this trend? How will they pan out for other industries apart from the B2C one?
So I think the B2B industries ultimately will have to benefit from the B2C industry. That trickle down effect has to happen, because if the B2C industries are selling more, they will need to buy more from the B2B industries. It's just a straight, mathematical equation, I think. So
Absolutely.
and it's just a question of so I think in the B2C industry, the entire sort of supply, I wouldn't call it the supply chain, it's more the delivery chain has tended to get a lot more disintermediated. So what has happened is, instead of me shipping inventory to my warehouse then sending it to my store then selling it to the customer, I am now going to send the goods straight to my customer. And and that has happened across the board, whether it's a small grocery shop, delivering directly without even a fancy app, right? It's not that. So you saw that during the pandemic, the restaurant delivery or the food delivery apps started suddenly doing grocery delivery or any other kind of emergency deliveries, right? Because they knew that the restaurant business was suffering. People were tending to mistrust food cooked outside. They wanted to cook at home. So ready to cook stuff was improving. Availability of stuff or options were increasing and improving. And people were flipping their business models to saying, can we also do delivery of, if I'm delivering, what difference does it make whether it's a cooked pizza or it is the ingredients to cook a pizza? It doesn't make a difference, right? So they started enabling a lot of that as well. And that's helped a lot of stores also go direct to their consumer instead of waiting for the consumer to come to them, right? So people have started using, chat apps, and acceptance of remote payment or digital payment became very high. When any one of these wallets, there was pretty much everybody now delivers and accepts electronic payment. So you don't have to physically interact to interact commercially. That's, I think, what has happened a lot. The B2B portion already has started. I mean, you can see that the supply, if I am selling more, shirts and trousers, I will need to buy more material from the B2B, from the mills and from the textile manufacturers, right? It just stands to reason. So that trickle down effect, I think, has already started. And
it will happen.
It will happen. It will happen.
Yes.
The question is, how can I now?
I'm glad you said that. And my next question was just about that. How do you streamline it for productivity? Because a lot of the MSME guys, like you said, the textile B2B guys, will now be wondering, will that affect my productivity? I will go through this digital transformation. I will make sure my entire supply chain, from the raw material side all the way up to my distribution center and the brand, actually, you guys can do a digital stack. It is possible. It will trickle down. You're saying they should go through it now or never.
Yeah, they should, and they will, because I think the streamlining that we were talking about, it's really about saying, am I building to stock, or am I manufacturing to stock, or am I manufacturing to order?
Yes.
The difference between that is my time to market. So to the extent I can improve my manufacturing system and process to say make it more and more just in time, and use the pull rather than the push, in the sense that I'm stocking and then I'm pushing out to the market. Instead of doing that, I'm waiting for the pull to come and from my customer, and that in turn will help me make sure that there is no wastage, that I am manufacturing what exactly my customer wants or my client wants. So that the more I can make it just in time, and the more I can improve my manufacturing process. Now, how will I do that, right? That's where I have to bring in a certain amount of digital transformation in my own process on two fronts. One is the process of the manufacturing itself, right? How do I make that leaner? How do I therefore make that more productive? How do I make that more just in time? And the second part is the data analytics part of it. So what are my orders? And what, which are which parts of my business or which products of mine are getting greater orders? How do I therefore then do some amount of backward linking to say, make sure that my raw material also comes in time? So there are no gaps in my process. Now, the only smart way, I would say, I mean, there are hundreds of ways of doing that, but the smart way to do that is to be able to find some kind of a digital solution, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that, in between the answer that you gave us, there's another answer. The common misconception, a lot of the MSMEs say, oh, okay, let us do digital transformation. Let us get all these tools in. But they don't set themselves an objective of using data and how having to use this data effectively for a business functionality is where the misconception lies, right? So your thoughts on digital transformation and its misconceptions?
There are I don't know if let me use an analogy, and I use this analogy a fair bit.
Please.
When suppose you're going to a new place, right? The first time you're going to some place, you would have noticed that going there takes you a lot longer than coming back, yes. Right? Because on the way back, you know the route. So the fundamental is, if you know where you want to end up, you will get there faster.
Yeah, correct.
So instead of starting without a roadmap, you start with the end in mind. You start saying, what is the end result I want? And therefore work backwards from them. So what is your objective? Have a clear objective, have a clear end result in mind, and then work backwards from there. You will find it's easier to get to the destination because you already know the destination when you start.
Yes.
Right.
So that's a great point.
That I think is the first step in doing it right. The second thing I think is people feel apprehensive that there is a huge capital outlay or a large investment that is required upfront. And then what if it doesn't work? That entire investment is down the drain, right? And that's a genuine concern to have. But if you look at the people who are providing these digital transformation tools, they have also realized that. Yeah. And because some of them are pretty large, they also realize that unless they make the investment, it will be difficult for them to get the customer. And for them to do that, what they do is they say, we will invest in the infrastructure, we will invest in all of this, and we will sell it to you on a subscription basis. So then the risk that you're taking, or the leap of faith that you're taking, is far safer, or the risk is far less, because I'm going to, I say the term I use is, instead of saying pay as you go, it should be pay as you grow, right?
Yes, I agree.
Yeah, because it's difficult for me to decide what should be the capacity.
Yeah, adjust it against your revenue. Adjust these experiments against your revenue. It's like you get people to transform your business, adjust it, do a revenue share, pay as you go. That's a great point.
Yeah, or you pay on a subscription basis, or you say, I'll do, even in rentals nowadays, for example, a lot of people are doing revenue share, saying that, look, if your location is good and I'm getting good footfalls into my restaurant because your mall is good, or my store because your mall is good, I'm happy to share a part of my revenue. And if I'm not getting the footfalls, then I don't have to pay you that rent. So it's a similar kind of model, even in tools that increasingly today. So let's say, Microsoft has an Office 365, which runs on a complete subscription model, and it comes with so many tools.
Correct.
You have a different menu that, you can have a EB3, EB5, whichever one. And that will come with your teams to do this kind of calls. It will come with the usual spreadsheet, Word, this, that, the other, right? SAP, as you were mentioning, this whole the Bharat investment that they're making, they've got big investments on the whole piece of trying to enable the smaller businesses move on to things like I think SAP Business One or Business by Design that they call it, where it's a kind of a cloud-based thing where you again pay as you grow. Because why would I? If somebody tells me you have to implement an ERP, my first thought is, okay, 1 crore for licenses, 1 crore for hardware, 2 crores gone there before I've even started the implementation.
Yeah.
Then so much for implementation, then God knows 6 months it will take, what business disruption. If I can convert that into a more flexible model, then the adoption increases tremendously.
Yeah, flexibility is the name of the game. And I agree with you. I think a lot of these tools should focus on revenue share, build and grow together, rather than, like you mentioned, license and upfront costs, and then, leaving MSMEs in the lurch, right? That's what's happened. And we've all seen that as an example. And that's why I think you're right. People don't like digital transformation because they've invested in upfront and then they don't know whether things are transformed.
And everybody's got, or not everybody's got, but everybody's heard somebody else's horror story of how they made an investment and it didn't work, right?
Absolutely.
So then that is, and when you are trying to conserve cash, when you're trying to, make sure that all your investments are as prudent as possible, the last thing you want is a large outlay, and then you're literally building a temple and praying that this works out, right? So if you have it in sort of, bite-sized,
Yes.
then I'll bite it, I'll taste it. If it doesn't look good, I won't take a second bite, right? If it doesn't taste good.
Absolutely. That's where the power of subscription is. That's what,
Exactly.
guys, if you're doing digital transformation, the power of subscription in the cloud is a fascinating thing to explore a little bit, understand it. If you like it, you can chew more. Otherwise, you could say no. That's a fascinating point. That's a fascinating point. So I want to talk about, because we're running out of time, I have 2 more questions. I wanted to understand, we briefly touched upon the government's role, the moratorium that was provided and, giving guarantees on your working capital, when banks lend to you. All that's happened. Is there anything more to be done for the SME industry to survive and thrive in the next coming months?
I think skill development, that's the most important, because one of the other things that the MSMEs suffered, at least in the initial days, that a lot of the labor in MSMEs tends to be what we call migrant labor, right?
Yes.
So that was a big setback, both for the labor as well as for the manufacturers or the companies, the producers. I think some kind of a broader basing of I would say infrastructure, right? So why should manufacturing be only concentrated in suburbs of big cities, and therefore labor needs to migrate, right? Why can't the manufacturing migrate closer to the labor? So I think one of the steps that I think the government is taking good steps is building these sort of corridors which provide the infrastructure, right? So then along that corridor, you can have multiple smaller towns or, where some of this manufacturing or economic activity can take place. And once you reduce barriers to movement and you reduce or you improve the infrastructure for the movement, then it becomes a lot easier. And you can then move the economic activity further away. Then you reduce pressure on cities, you reduce the problem of the migrant labor, and you are able to provide employment closer to people's homes, right?
That's really well said again. And sir, I wanted to know from you, with all that we've discussed, your advice to MSME entrepreneurs. We discussed digital transformation. We discussed why they have to go subscription models. We discussed how B2B and B2C will be seamless now. Again, vertically integrated stacks, it's going to become the new normal. What is that one piece of advice? I know a lot of the MSME guys watching this will say, in India, you have to manage cash and that's cash is king. But, today cash has a lot to do with, how efficient is your business with technology. And today, truly, the cloud has made moving to technology easier, better. So your final thoughts to MSME founders and people who've been in the legacy business for long, what should they look at in the new era?
So I think what I said right at the beginning is what I will repeat, which is your biggest advantage is that your decision making process is much quicker, and you can be a lot more nimble and flexible. Therefore, use that to your advantage, right? Be nimble, be flexible, think about how you're doing things, and don't be afraid to change, because honestly, change is the only constant, right? As Tennyson said, the old order changeth, yielding place to new, and God fulfills himself in many ways, lest one good order should corrupt the world. So, just because it was done in a particular way yesterday doesn't mean it has to be done in the same way today. And that nimbleness and that flexibility and that speed of decision making is the biggest advantage you have. So use it to the maximum possible, right? And then if there are tools that can help you use it better, adopt those tools. That is, the second part of what we were discussing around the digital piece. So I would say, be nimble and flexible and be quick with decision making.
And that's beautifully summarized, Mr. Alok. That's beautiful, because the new order is about embracing change, and embracing change means you're scaling, you're creating wealth, you're enabling these changes to go across society. So that's the new normal, guys. And that's Mr. Alok Mishra, the operating partner, Chief Operating Officer for India at General Atlantic. Great views and great thoughts. I loved everything that he spoke about, how SMEs should transform himself. I also love the fact that he spent time during the pandemic learning Tamil. And like many of us, we've digitally transformed ourselves. I'm doing this from my studio, and I'm signing off with Mr. Alok Mishra. Thank you very much. This is Vishal Krishna from Your Story.